Welcome back to Career Catharsis. I'm your host, Neha Khurram. Every episode, I invite experts in the fields of wellness and transformation to guide your personal and professional development journey. Today, I will be chatting with my friend Amit Kataby, life coach and speaker, empowering us to become aware of our self-limiting beliefs through the stories we tell ourselves. If you are tackling feeling stuck in any area of your life, at home or at work or in friendships, this episode will help you open new ways to discover yourself with renewed perspective. Thank you for joining me on today's episode of Career Catharsis, Amit. I'm so excited to be chatting with you a little bit about the stories we tell ourselves and the journey to self-realization. So before we dive into any questions, I'd love for our listeners to get a better understanding of your background if you wanted to introduce yourself.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for having me. I'm super excited every time I have an opportunity to chat. I take it. So thanks. So my name is Amit Kataby. Like you said, I am a self-realization guide. And often to explain that, I kind of compare myself to a shaman. So consider me as your shaman, maybe minus the ayahuasca in the shaman the shaman ceremony. So what you do when you go to a shaman or any spiritual guide, you begin this journey, this process of opening your awareness and your consciousness to go beyond your conditioned mind. Now, what is conditioned mind is basically all those things, all those habits. We are all bundle of habits and stories and things from our past and what we believe, about ourselves or about the world. And going beyond that really opens up some new possibilities for you. So when you go to a shaman, for example, and you do an ayahuasca ceremony or any, psychedelic kind of experience, you never really know what you're going to get. So you may have some expectations on what this is going to be, and you may have some intentions or some goals in mind, but you really don't know what is it that you're going to see for yourself. And I think that's the most exciting thing in self-realization. And I feel that it's the same with me. So people will come to me for different things, but the journey is really what we're doing. We don't really know what we are going to get, but I always say I'm so excited to find out. So that's pretty much what I do.
Wow, I honestly just got goosebumps, chills. I think that is so beautiful and very impactful work and very much needed in today's climate of uncertainty. And I think now is a time where a lot of people are journeying inwards. So they're looking for guidance from people such as yourself to kind of walk with them on that journey or get them to discover that, right? So can you tell us a little bit about your journey in helping people dig deeper on their path to self-realization?
Absolutely. I think I need to begin, I guess, in the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I'm born and raised in Israel, and I grew up with a father that is mentally ill. My father was diagnosed with different things. I won't go to each, but one of them is schizophrenia. Excuse me. He was diagnosed as a sociopath, and I've watched my father have thoughts that would take him, have thoughts that would really have control over him. And as you can imagine, watching, someone that you love so much, someone that is close to you, if it's ruining himself or everything that is around him, he's suicidal as well.
Mm-hmm.
And really watching him obviously had a huge impact on me. So as I remember, as a child or as a teenage, just watching him all the time, and not just watching him to necessarily understand him, even though I always try to understand him. I never understood why he thought that nothing was in his control. Everything that he did was he attributed to it was always someone else's fault. always someone else's fault. And I used to watch him often, mostly to kind of protect myself. So he was very unpredictable. So watching him kind of helped me, or maybe I thought that it helped me
Mm.
protect myself. And even though I couldn't help my father, okay, so my father is on the spectrum. Obviously, I feel like we're all on a spectrum of some kind of
Mm-hmm.
unawareness. So of course my father is way out there in the spectrum. Most of us are in the middle when it comes to our awareness and consciousness and what we know about our thoughts and how we identify with them. But really, he was not probably, but he was my first inspiration to begin and help people um, with not having thoughts take them.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So he was really your motivation to not only go on your own journey of self-realization, but then to empower others to seek the same.
Absolutely. You see, seeing someone, especially someone so close to you, just getting taken
Mm-hmm.
by his behavior was it was frustrating. That's what it is. It's frustrating to see that people really don't believe in the fact that they can have some control over their lives.
Mm.
And what it made me do was just take unreasonable control over mine.
Mm.
So it really made, in a way, I almost wanted to prove him wrong.
Mm.
It started with that, and I started spreading that message around me since I was really a teenager.
Mm-hmm.
So if it was first of all around friends and around family, and then in my 20s, I started also helping other women,
Mm-hmm.
mostly women who were I volunteered in different organizations, and the organizations that I used to volunteer the most were women organizations.
Mm-hmm.
So women who's been through different kind of abuse, if it was sexual abuse or mental abuse or domestic violence. There was also something that was close to my heart because my father's disease also made him very violent, not
Mm-hmm.
just to himself but to us as well. So it was very important to me to be that rock for them as well.
Wow. So, okay, you mentioned working with women, but I'd like to know a little bit more about the profile of clients that you're currently working with.
Mhm. So currently, I mostly work with women, even though I love working with men. I've worked with men
Mm-hmm.
in the past as well. And I do work mostly with women. I feel like still I work with a lot of women who've been through some kind of sexual abuse or domestic violence. There's a lot of stigma
Mm-hmm.
around that. And I always say, like, I believe that we all deserve to walk this life feeling worthy and feeling
Mm-hmm.
fulfilled and not feeling judged. That's something I'm very passionate about. So bringing women in who's been through all those things, and
Mm-hmm.
really showing them the possibility beyond that, because women who come with certain
Mm-hmm.
with these type of coming after these type of relationships really have not a lot of self-esteem. So working with them on opening them up and showing them that they are worthy,
Mm-hmm.
it's really like it gives me goosebumps just even talking about it,
Right.
because really showing them the like I said, all these possibilities that they have and their worthiness is really
Mm-hmm.
worthwhile everything I do. And I've done it for free for so long, for so many years. I volunteered
Mm-hmm.
for organizations to do it really only because I believe that it's a mission.
Mm-hmm. Something that stood out to me in one of our previous conversations is that the work that we do as coaches is service, right? It's service to humankind. And I know that we had also touched on the fact that right now, with the mass unemployment and layoffs and uncertainty in the economy, a lot of people are reaching out to you with job search related issues, and kind of tying into what you said about self-esteem. A lot of self-esteem issues stem from trauma that is unresolved, or inner critic, or self-limiting beliefs. But I'd like to kind of hear from your side, what is the number one issue that people are facing right now? And what is the number one tip that you have when it comes to some of that anxiety or negativity or sort of struggle currently?
Yeah, so I have been working a lot with either other coaches.
Mm-hmm.
They have clients when you come just like yourself, that people come to them with different career struggles
Mm-hmm.
or looking for jobs or maybe trying to change jobs. And I come in more as I feel that I come in more as the beginning of why,
Mm-hmm.
right? So why do we have this kind of relationship with ourselves or with our jobs as if it's says something about us? So there's a lot of self-worth that is attached to, and not
Mm-hmm.
just jobs, but there's a lot of self-worth that is attached to outside things. So the power that I strive to give people is inner strength, because you see, pandemics are not new. Pandemics are going to happen.
Right.
Financial crises are going to happen, and a lot of other things are going to happen. None of us is excluded from things to happen in our outside world, but we need to have such a strong inside world so that we'll know how to react to them. So I
Mm-hmm.
feel that definitely a lot of people come to me with either self-sabotaging behavior, that
Mm-hmm.
something keeps showing up in their life and they don't know why.
Wow.
They don't understand why, they keep finding themselves in the same position.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, and a lot of it is related to work. And often when we start the sessions, they don't necessarily, and that's where the gap comes in. So if something keeps on showing up for you, and it means that there's something there that you don't see for yourself, otherwise it wouldn't, otherwise you would stop it. Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
there's something there, and I just want to talk about that gap for a second, because knowing things is just not enough in what we do. So
Mm-hmm.
we can know how to stop smoking, we can know how to lose weight, we can know how to, maybe apply for a job or
Mm-hmm.
all those things. But yet if we still find ourselves in the same situation where if, if I sit in an interview and I don't understand why I'm so, again, if it's I'm so nervous or I'm feeling, I come from this place of lack, this place that,
Mm-hmm.
they need, I need them or they don't need me. It's really the place of worthiness.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes I feel like it's a little beyond just, it's not sometimes, I'll say always, in the cases that I've seen, it's a little beyond than having a strategy around interviewing. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
there is a gap there that often people don't understand and don't know and don't see for themselves, on why do I feel the way I feel, and why am I stuck in this specific area. And that's what I work with people
Mm-hmm.
on.
It's the underlying why of their behavior, their attitudes, and their beliefs. That's super,
Absolutely.
super powerful. I think, in my experience as a coach working with job seekers in particular, I think sometimes candidates will be very excited about a particular opportunity or an interview, and they may have this surface level confidence, but then going back to what you said about self sabotaging behavior, I think sometimes there is some neighbor in the room, in their mind that, they can't kick out. And it's kind of tapping into who that voice is, why that voice is still there, and kind of finding a way to move forward, really. So, on the topic of getting unstuck, what is your number one tip for people struggling with kind of a block in whatever goal they're trying to achieve?
I think that the number one, you see, the self-realization is a process. So I want to go back to what when I said with a shaman or with the ayahuasca or the people who experiment with psychedelics. You could take something, you can take a psychedelic or do something like that, and it will, maybe open your awareness for a
Mm-hmm.
little bit. You'll see things for yourself, and when you see something for yourself, why it's so important to see new things? Because when you see it, you can't go back. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so when you've seen something, this is it. We need to move forward from that. The thing is with the process is that it's slowly but surely. It takes longer to begin this process, and then you begin also to be a little bit more self-reliant when it comes to open your awareness.
Mm-hmm.
And it could, for some people it could take a little longer, or some people can see things depending on how open you are.
Mm-hmm.
um, and the thing is that as you walk through this process, it's really important to know that you need to come open and aware. So if we're looking for tips, even
Mm-hmm.
though, like I said, the reason that I'm saying it's a process, it's because I don't love giving just one, fix me up kind of things, because
Right.
it's not what I do. But really, the first thing is to start becoming aware to your inner conversation. Some
Mm-hmm.
of us don't even realize that we talk to ourselves 24/7, maybe minus
Mm-hmm.
sleeping, but even in our sleeping, our unconsciousness is still coming in some kind of form in
Mm-hmm.
our dreams. But we really talk to ourselves from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to sleep. So begin really paying attention to it.
Mm-hmm.
Start really being aware to this conversation. So it's really being aware of your awareness,
Mm.
right? And you can
Yeah.
do it everything in everywhere, everywhere you go and in everything you do.
Mm-hmm.
Just really start becoming aware of that. And really after that, what I recommend is to begin. And it's funny because I say to people, begin stopping. And that's
Mm-hmm.
that's it sound kind of weird, but really start to
Right.
stop yourself and start asking yourself questions. Okay, so start saying, but do I have to be this way? But does it have
Mm-hmm.
to be this way? So if you say about yourself, I've always been this way, this always annoyed me, this is my pet
Mm-hmm.
peeve, or different things that you tell yourselves, that we tell ourselves, we need to start stopping and just saying, well, but could I do something different? But what if I'll
Mm-hmm.
do this? Stop putting all these, you need to start putting question marks around everything,
Yeah.
everything that you believe in. And sometimes it could be really scary because, if you identify yourself, for
Mm-hmm.
example, as a feminist, okay, which nothing is wrong with it. I've identified myself as a feminist for many, many, many years. And there's a lot
Right.
of values in it. Sometimes there's some things and beliefs that don't really serve us, that kind of close us to other things. So really start questioning all those things. And this is also when it comes to the attachment,
Mm-hmm.
because again, we attach ourselves to those things, to being a feminist, being black, being white. And that really separates us also from
Mm-hmm.
each other. And it's kind of hard to see each other when we hold those beliefs so strong. And then
Mm-hmm.
we just live life and walk life in that way.
Right. The concept of over identification is something that's starting to creep up as we do journey into, I would say, a climate where identity is being discussed more and more for many good reasons and for many values, as you mentioned, that people want to promote and see in others and in society. But yeah, I think over identification is its own topic that, it would be great to even unpack at some point. Um, and I do think that in the workplace, we're starting to see a lot of those conversations and behavior manifest as well. So I think something I'd like to know on your end is how can people start to create a more two-way street when it comes to this inner dialogue? Because I think what happens in my experience, what I've seen with my clients is that a lot of the times they find that their mind is talking to them, but they're forgetting that they have the power to kind of talk back to themselves, if that makes any sense. So I love what you said about start stopping. And what I usually say is practice the pause, and not just in general life, but like I specifically talk about it in an interview setting. But I love that you're kind of applying that philosophy to I guess the inner dialogue that occurs with ourselves. Start stopping. But can you kind of add any other ideas to that when it comes to inner dialogue and how to start asking ourselves the right questions?
Yes, absolutely. So I'm a serial meditator.
Hmm.
Meditation is something that I think we don't do enough of. And I feel that it kind of emerged to the West maybe in the past, I don't know how many years, but not that long and not enough. I think that meditation is a practice that we all should do once a day, even twice a day. I sometimes do it 3 times a day, understanding a few things about meditation. One, there's many ways to meditate. Okay. And the meditation is exactly that way to put space between you and your thoughts, what
Mm-hmm.
you were just mentioning. So, how do you put now, and everything happens in that space. When you start putting space between you and your thoughts, you start understanding that they're not you.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of the don't believe everything you think. Okay. And when I talk about this space, why is this space so important? First of all, everything happens in that space between. So let's talk about space a little bit. Even in a house, if you
Mm-hmm.
look at a house is 4 walls, right? But that doesn't, it's not what makes a house, the 4 walls. It's the space inside the house that makes a wall, I'm sorry, it's the space between the walls that makes the house,
Yeah.
right? It's what happens inside that space. There's one sentence by Dr. Wayne Dyer that said that really resonated with me. That he says, "It's not the bars that hold the tiger, but it's the space between the bars." Right. So just think about
Mm.
that for a moment. It's always the space between. Even if you think of words and poems and lyrics,
Mm.
what really makes a poem. I mean, if you'll put words with no space, they'll make no sense, right? You need to put space between. So it's the same thing with meditation. And often people tell me, when I tell them to begin meditating, it's a must. When I talk to clients, I always recommend to begin the practice of meditation, even if you need to do it 3 minutes a day. That's
Mm-hmm.
enough to begin. And I often hear things, I can't meditate. My head goes, my thoughts go everywhere. So I have
Mm-hmm.
a few things on that. First of all, you're not the only one. I don't know anyone except the gurus or the sads in India,
Mm-hmm.
and the Deepak Chopras that are masters of meditation.
Mm-hmm.
But you're not special, okay, in that way. We all, our mind goes everywhere and it will go all the time. It's enough for you to sit with yourself for
Mm-hmm.
3 minutes. And even if your mind is going to go, is going to go back and forth and your thoughts are going to come in and out, just
Mm-hmm.
the practice of sitting and bringing yourself back again and again, you're meditating. It's enough.
Yeah.
It's enough to do that. And it is really vital and it's crucial. and
Mm-hmm.
i and I also always say, if you cannot sit with yourself for 3 minutes, okay, a day, you are in
Mm-hmm.
bad company. You need to really think about that. Okay. And i
Yeah.
think i think that that's what really become really present to people right
Mm-hmm.
now, that we are really being met with ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
because social gatherings are less and less, right? Some people don't have families where they live.
Yeah.
Some people are not married or don't have kids or just don't have a lot of people around
Yeah.
them. So you are stuck with yourself. So you really need to make sure that you love being with yourself, that your thoughts are
Mm-hmm.
not, again, that your thoughts don't have control and power over you. And
Mm.
the fact that we binge often on TV shows, or always with our phones,
Mm-hmm.
it's because it's so mindless. It's such a mindless activity. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so you don't have to be with yourself when you're watching
Yeah.
television. You don't have to be with yourself when you're always on the phone.
Yeah.
And this is also where the self-love starts to come in, because if you start, meditating and being with yourself and start appreciating
Mm-hmm.
everything that is around you, and the little moments in life, you'll start developing this kind of self-love to
Mm-hmm.
yourself. And really, what else is there besides self-love?
Yeah. Absolutely. I think you're drawing a really great distinction between being alone and spending time with yourself. So, spending quality time with oneself is different than simply being alone in the absence of others, because that's when we can be very mindless, as you mentioned, either watching TV or scrolling through media or consuming something or the other, whether it's food or smoking or some other kind of activity. And not to say that activities aren't useful or that they don't have their purpose or, you know, you can have mindful activities too. In fact, I would say maybe painting or some kind of hobby could be a really mindful, meditative practice. And not to just say something calm, but for some people, maybe that's working out. Maybe that's something that's not your stereotypical spiritual activity, right? But I guess what I'm hearing is being comfortable with yourself to kind of um, be conscious and mindful with that time versus spending it aimlessly or trying to distract yourself from your inner thoughts or whatever that practice is that you're doing on your own.
Absolutely. And there's also nothing wrong with, binging on television shows from
Yeah,
time to time, right?
exactly.
There's nothing, I do that too. And I don't think there's anything wrong with it. It's when it's being used to escape all
Yeah,
the time. It's when you
so-
don't feel that you can be with yourself. Is that when you feel that you always need to be around people. And of course, that
Mhm.
connections are very important. So being around people is also important. Again, it's when it's being used to not being alone and not
Right.
being with yourself. That's when it becomes very anxiety. This is where anxiety comes in,
Mm,
right? So this is where anxiety comes in because you will be with yourself. You are with yourself most
yeah.
of the time, especially now. So you might as well, be start being comfortable with it. And
Hmm.
one way that I also love to meditate is just like you said, just start bringing some mindfulness activities into your life, even when you're eating. Okay, so even when you're eating, eat mindfully in a way that you're experiencing food, that you're literally listening to the fork and knife on the plate when you're listening to your chewing. And I know that sometimes I tell people, and it could sound a little odd for people,
Yeah.
because we just don't tend we don't we don't eat that way. Even when we walk, when you walk outside, right, and you walk in somewhere, you just walk to walk.
Yeah,
You
we're
don't pay
focused on going
attention.
somewhere.
100%. We're just focusing on walking and where we are. Sometimes we can walk somewhere and drive somewhere and we're like, how did I get here? How did I get here so
Yeah.
quickly? Because I didn't even pay attention. So just realize that this is your life. This is what you're missing.
Mm.
You're literally missing living. You can't live here in your head and live
Hmm.
outside. It's either or. Okay, and we really need to choose.
Hmm.
And there's nothing in the mind. It's completely, it's 100% our, like I said, it's like it's made up, right? All these
Action.
thoughts, it's completely projection. And I want to expand on that. I'll try and go a little deeper. I know the
Sure.
conversation. Um so so a lot of the times what happens when you really start being and living in the now, and I know that that's something that we all strive for, because where else are you going to live? It's not like you can live anywhere else.
Mm-hmm.
And living in the now, the practice of meditation really helps. And what happens is when you start doing all these practices, you seeing that when you are in the now, nothing is really happening. Okay. So
Mm.
it could be, I always say, so life is a there's many paradoxes in life. And I, even say that life is a whole big paradox. So there's two things that happens when you meditate. So first of all, it's really it's the I think from my practices is that it's really the number one thing that really can help with anxiety in a healthy way. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
non-medication, healthy way to start putting you in the now, because all our stresses, everything really happens in our mind. If you really stop for a moment, and that's a practice that I've learned from Deepak Chopra. If I'm feeling anxious, I'll lay on the bed and I'll talk to myself and I'll say, Amit, nothing is happening. I'll feel the sheets on in my hands, or nothing is here. I'm laying in bed. I'm just laying in bed in my bedroom. Nothing is happening. So sometimes it's a lot more exciting in our mind, because that's where all the drama goes. And it's like the next moment is more important than what it's happening now.
Yeah.
Okay, so when you get to that, when you are able to really pause for a minute and understand that nothing is happening,
Yeah.
sometimes it could be a little overwhelming too,
Mm-hmm.
because then it's kind of, well, there's really nothing. Everything is happening in my head. But
Mm-hmm.
if you're able to do this as a way of, in a way of healing, you
Mm-hmm.
understand that if you'll get to this nothing, then what really means is that I can do anything or I can build anything, because
Yeah.
there's nothing there. There's really nothing there. And I know that talking about it could be a little, it sounds maybe a little simple,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not. I understand that it's not simple. I've been meditating for years now, and in the past year I've been meditating a lot, a lot more than I
Yeah.
usually do. It's very needed, and I
Yeah.
meditate a lot more. And it's practice. It's just like you're not going to go to the gym, and after 30 minutes in the gym, you're going to say to yourself, well, this is crap. I can't
Yeah.
do this. I can't, I'm not, I'm not fit. Or of course not. Why would you expect to get fit after 30 minutes at the
Mhm.
gym? So the same, don't expect to be this master meditator
Yeah.
after trying it once, and you
Mhm.
won't see anything until you really start practicing it in
Mhm.
your life. So really take 5 minutes a day. That's all.
Mhm.
5 minutes a day to do something that is to start bringing some awareness into your life. You can
Mhm.
walk outside, and I begin to talk about the walk-in. You can walk outside and just look at what you're seeing
Yeah.
without judging it. Don't call it a tree. Don't call it the river. We have a river here, and I look at the river,
Yeah.
and instead of judging it and saying what it is and calling it names, just be present to where you live, to where
Mhm.
you are, right?
Mm. Looking at it with a fresh perspective.
Absolutely. I like fresh perspective. I always say with curiosity, with
Mhm.
like a child. Okay, imagine that
Yeah.
you're like a child that's seeing things for the first time, and
Mhm.
you need to really open your curiosity, and it's really a mind exercise. I like saying in my events, when I kind of talk to people on how to listen and how
Mhm.
to walk, how to listen to this kind of conversation, because often you hear a lot of new things you've never heard before.
Mhm.
And when you listen to conversation, when I say listen with curiosity, now that can, up to interpretation.
Mhm.
Curiosity is, and how do you do that? And I say, if you go to a movie and for an hour and a half you believe that dogs and cats can talk, okay,
Mhm.
and you're not sitting there in the movie, right? You're not watching Pets World 2, and you're talking to your partner and saying things like, well, that's crap, dogs and cats can't
Mhm.
speak, because then you're not going to enjoy the movie. So you allow yourself to kind of let go and just watch the movie. Try to walk life this way. You'll be amazed of what you'll see, and you'll be amazed of how you feel, really.
I love that. So, I'd love to know, what is it that keeps you motivated in your practice?
In my well, it's a good question. It's fun because in the past, what used to get me motivated was always thinking about the future. But that was especially when I was back home. So living with
Mhm.
someone like my father, I was a minor for the time when I was a minor, and I couldn't, live home, and I
Mm.
had to stay at home. Really, what kept me motivated and kept me like mentally alive was always living in my head, and always imagining, and
Mm.
always visioning, and being in my bedroom and listening to music, and reading
Yeah.
poetry, and reading philosophy, and doing all those things, and reminding myself that there's life after this, that I don't
Yeah.
need to do, that I don't need, I'm not going to be here and suffer this
Yeah.
forever. Today, though, and that's also one of the things that, for example, I had to let go,
Mhm.
because if I saw myself as this person who always has visions, and always, plan the future and sees the future, and it saved me as a kid, I kind of had to let that go, because
Mhm.
that was also a huge source for anxiety for me.
Yeah.
So the shift from focusing on the future and what's going to be, to really practicing the being here and now, and
Mhm.
always understanding that this is it. This is all there is. Like right here, this moment that I'm
Yeah.
speaking with you right now, this is the most important moment right now. Right now,
Right.
me talking with you. This is it. And really, that keeps me motivated. It keeps me motivated, also the understanding and the knowing that I
Mhm.
have control over my life, that I have zero control on outside events.
Mhm.
Okay, think about the uncertainty and everything that's happening right now. So I don't have control on what's happening with this virus, and I don't have control on when I'm going to get the vaccine. I don't know what's
Right.
what's going to happen and what's going to be, but I do know that I have control over my mental. I do know
Mm-hmm.
that I can control my health, that I can choose to get up and to exercise, and I can choose to wake up and to, say my gratitudes or write in my journal and do all those things that keep me, like I said, that keep me motivated. So the big thing for
Right.
me is rituals. So
Mm-hmm.
rituals is something that really keeps me in check,
Mm-hmm.
and it's something that, again, there's some rituals I do religiously, if it's exercising, if it's meditating, journaling, and reading, and all that I can do in my first hour of the morning. Okay, it
Yeah,
doesn't it doesn't need to take it doesn't need to take half of your day. Okay, you can really, there's all of that, all everything I said could be done in 30 minutes, 45 minutes of your day.
absolutely.
It's about being, it's more being consistent. So really just what keeps you motivated is that, is to know that I have control over that.
Love that. Having control and then practicing that in the form of rituals so no one can take that away from you. Love
Absolutely.
that. And what would you say is a highlight of your career so far?
I think that choosing, doing what I'm really good at and what I love,
Mm-hmm.
because for myself, I also lived in a story for so long, a story that I can't do this, that I can't, I can't possibly do this for a living. Like used to be my side hustle for so long.
Yeah.
I did it for, like I said, I did it with different organizations. I guided groups, even if it was at work. I had a group at work that I used to kind of guide through different conversations. I guided groups in my house. I mentored others, and I also had some fears and stories around, leaving a job and going on my own. And the most liberating thing that I've done for myself was liberate myself from all this self-doubt, all this
Mm-hmm.
access of thinking that a job and a life need to look in a certain way,
Mm-hmm.
right? That I need to get a paycheck, or that I need to, or I need someone to hire me for
Mm-hmm.
a certain thing. And that was really the highlight of my career, just choosing myself and going for it. And the other thing would be, every time I work with someone
Mm-hmm.
and I see on their face that they were able to change some behavior or thought
Mm-hmm.
that was limiting them, is just, I feel like I'm getting wings every time that
Amazing.
happens. I
Yeah.
really do.
Yeah.
Yes.
I totally understand. I think for me, I feel the same way anytime a candidate of mine gets a job. That's sort of the main goal we're working towards. It never gets old, right?
Never.
That happiness, that joy in helping others, it's super rewarding.
Hmm.
So, I would love for our listeners to maybe get some resources or ideas in terms of support if you know of any that you'd like to share on the show.
Sure. I think that when I really, like, I don't know, maybe like 6 years ago, when I had kind of this, I had what I call this fed up moment,
Mm-hmm.
this moment where I felt that I was weak to what was having me.
Mm-hmm.
In a way, I felt that my thoughts were too much, and there was that my thoughts had me, like I said. And I think
Mm-hmm.
I had this very spiritual moment where I felt that if I was not going to really take care of myself, then I may end up like my father. And in that moment, I just made a decision. In that specific moment, I made a choice to just go out for a run for the first time. I never ran in my life before,
Wow.
and that was, yes, and that was really it. And I remember running and crying. And don't ever run and cry because it makes you nauseous, just FYI.
I
but
bet. Yeah.
but that was kind of my first moment on doing that. And and that's when I also started meditating. I took, it was
Mm.
about, I think, 6 years ago. So when it comes to resources, there's so much free things out there. So the number one thing that I tell people, that I think it's very, it's not, um, I think it needs to be spoken more, as philosophy. So
Mm.
if you read philosophy, people like, Marcus Aurelius, the
Oh yeah.
meditations, a different philosophy, like different, Stoic philosophy. They
Mm.
really talk. These are things that have been out there for years. The Tao Te Ching, by Lao Tzu, things that have to do with your existence. Why are we here?
Mhm.
Okay, what is joy? I feel like, in the East, in the West, joy is associated with excitement, and in the East, joy is associated more with peace. Okay, so we don't need to be excited all the time to feel joyful. It's actually just about being peaceful. So all these things, all these resources, and you can find them free on YouTube.
Yeah.
And to kind of to really to give you some perspective, because that's what happens when we're so anxious. We have zero perspective. We feel everything is so dark around us. So when you can start going into that rabbit hole. It's actually a good one. It's actually a good rabbit hole. And also, one thing that I love most is being part of groups. So
Mhm.
find groups, be around people. You're not alone in this. We're, 7 billion people in the world, and a lot of us
Yeah.
feel lonely. We
Oh
shouldn't
yeah.
feel lonely. We all, you and I, we experiencing things very, very similar. So
Mhm.
maybe, your struggles are different, and my struggles may differ again in the story that
Mhm.
we tell ourselves, but we all feel, again, not worthy, or loneliness, okay, or jealousy, or certain things, certain feelings that will catch us all the time. But when you're around groups, when you're around other people, and I see, oh, she's going through the same thing. Oh, I felt that way. I know how that feels. It really makes you feel like you're not alone anymore. So
Mhm.
one group that I take a lot of inspiration from, and I'm a part of, is the 12-step group. Most
Mhm.
people know it as for addictions, and what we don't know is that a lot of us are addictive to a lot of
Oh
things. It's
yeah.
not, it's definitely not just alcohol, and drugs, or
Mm.
things like that. I know. So I worked with someone who was addicted to approval, and to
Yeah.
the point that it was so important for her to get approval from her bosses and her parents, and of course that the source of everything was the parents, right? It kind of, and then it translates to friends, and it translates to your job. It meets you everywhere. If you're you know
Mhm.
if you're addicted to something, it will meet you in other places in life, to the point that she was really literally killing herself at work, that she went to the hospital twice.
Wow.
So that's what I'm talking about when I say that now it has you. Now when your addiction has you, and you go to the hospital, and then it also costs her in her relationship, obviously. So join these kind of groups. A lot of them are for free.
Yeah.
Okay, a lot of them are for free. Some of them you can even find, like events, an Eventbrite, or certain things like that. Just find support. Always find support.
Mhm. Absolutely. I think leaning into support networks is so crucial. It doesn't always have to be people that you already know. I think we live in a time where reaching out to absolute strangers, you might have so much more in common with them and go through a journey with them that is very parallel. So, really great advice there. Is there anything else that you'd like to share before we end our discussion?
Sure. And if you haven't, I just watched the movie Soul by
So,
Disney. Yes, I
yeah.
always I always love bringing television and
Yeah.
and things, because it's just so easy to understand.
Mhm.
And I won't. I'll try not to spoil the movie to anyone,
Yeah.
but it just really touched me in a way that I know a
Mhm.
lot of people are in pursuit to some purpose, or
Mhm.
some high purpose that we're here to serve. And that's where also the paradoxes come, because a lot of people, you'll hear like different messages, you know each person has a purpose. And
Mhm.
but I think that we put so much pressure on ourselves to find some kind of purpose, and then when we don't find it, we feel so disconnected,
Mm.
or our self-worth is starting to get damaged. And to really understand that we're really here to just experience. Okay, we're not here necessarily to fix the world, or to or some heroic mission. You're here
Mhm.
to experience, in this self-realization process, this look in, looking within, first of all, it's a very, very, very brave journey. It
Mm-hmm.
might sound or feel a little scary to some because it could be confronting, as you know, as a coach, because you need to deal with, the good, the bad, and ugly. But
Mm-hmm.
there's freedom on the other side. So hang on to that freedom. Every time you find something about yourself, even if it's something you don't really want to look at,
Mm.
there's freedom there on the other side. So
I
just
love
don't stop.
I love that. Yeah, I think, a lot of people talk about it as facing your demons and making it some scary thing, but meeting yourself can be so freeing, as you said, and that awareness piece, right? Being aware of why you do what you do, and how you want to actually design your life and how you want to live your life is really the basis of so much of what people are striving to accomplish, whether it's peace or success. I think what you mentioned about people looking at external triggers or this excitement, or these highs, but really, quote unquote, success is that peace. And to identify with that, you kind of have to meet yourself and be comfortable with yourself. So many amazing insights there. Thank you so much for the conversation.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed today's discussion on unpacking the stories we tell ourselves, moving past self limiting beliefs through mindfulness practices, and getting comfortable spending time with ourselves. For more information on today's guest, Amit Kataby's coaching practice, check out the show notes and be sure to subscribe to Career Catharsis to hear new topics in wellness and career transformation.